There's a certain kind of person who doesn't quite blend into the world's constant hum. They speak less than they listen. They notice the angle of sunlight across the floor and wonder about time, how it moves, how everything changes even when it seems still. They pause before replying, not out of hesitation, but because their mind is juggling a dozen interpretations at once. These are the deep thinkers, the ones who live more inside ideas than in noise, who can stretch a fleeting instant into an entire constellation of meaning. But if you've ever been one of them, you know how heavy that can feel. Deep thinking isn't just about intelligence. It's about sensitivity. It's about perceiving the threads that others overlook. It's both illumination and weight. To truly understand them, you have to see the quiet friction between their vast inner world and the restless outer one. Most assume that too much thought breeds confusion, but for deep thinkers, thought is their language. It's how they breathe through existence. They don't simply see a tree, they notice its roots digging into the soil, the tilt of its branches reaching for light, the echo of endurance reflected in their own life. They turn every detail into metaphor. A brief conversation becomes an emotional landscape. A pause becomes a question. A single glance becomes an entire narrative. Psychologists describe this as high-trait introspection, a natural tendency to examine not just the world, but their own inner reactions to it. They live in a constant dialogue between what happens outside and what stirs within. The question why isn't a challenge to them, it's oxygen. This mental habit links to what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the cluster of brain regions that spark during reflection, creativity, and memory. In their minds, that network hums endlessly, forming connections, weaving meaning, drawing parallels. But the same gift that fuels insight can also isolate. While others move quickly through moments, deep thinkers pause. They absorb, they study. And by the time they've gathered their thoughts, the world has already moved ahead. So they stay quiet. Their silence gets mistaken for apathy when it's actually depth. A deep thinker doesn't crave chatter. They crave understanding. They want conversations that reach beyond the surface, into dreams, fears, and the hidden machinery of the heart. Casual talk drains them, because while most drift across the shallows, they're diving through the dark water searching for pearls of truth. That depth, though, carries its own price. It turns easily into overthinking. They replay scenes, analyze every phrase, wonder what someone really meant, question whether they spoke too much or too little. Their mind loops through endless possibilities, not out of insecurity, but because they can't stop seeing complexity everywhere. Every action holds layers. Every emotion hides a story. Their brains keep untangling threads long after others have let them go. Psychology has a word for this kind of mental mirror: metacognition, the act of thinking about your own thinking. For most, it flickers on occasionally. For deep thinkers, it's constant. It's as if they're both the actor and the audience in their own minds, observing, questioning, revising. This self-reflection gives them remarkable awareness, but also a tendency toward self-doubt. Because when you notice everything, you also notice every flaw, every imperfection, every unfinished corner of yourself in vivid clarity. A deep thinker doesn't simply ask, "What do I want?" They ask, "Why do I want it? What shaped that desire? What would change if I had it, or if I never did?" They dissect love, ambition, fear, and memory until abstract feelings almost feel tangible, like they could be held between their palms. But in that search for understanding, they sometimes forget the beauty of simply existing. They forget that not every experience needs to be decoded. Some things are meant to be lived, not analyzed. You'll often find deep thinkers wandering alone, headphones on, not because they crave isolation, but because solitude feels like home. It's their native language, the space where their thoughts can breathe and unfold. They carry entire oceans of emotion beneath still water, calm on the surface, but with quiet currents moving deep below. They might sit in a cafe staring into space, but inside, their mind is replaying a single conversation from a decade ago, trying to understand what it revealed about who they once were. It isn't self-torment, it's exploration. Deep thinkers aren't judging themselves. They're charting themselves, mapping the terrain of their inner world to see where each feeling lives. To an outsider, that can look detached or absent-minded. But what's really happening is perspective. They're viewing life from every possible angle before they speak or act. Psychologists call one aspect of this existential thinking, the habit of not just questioning one's own life, but life itself. Time, purpose, morality, consciousness. These aren't worries, they're inquiries into existence. That's what separates deep thinking from ordinary overthinking. Overthinking spirals around fear of what might happen. Deep thinking dives into the nature of what is. It's the difference between anxiety and awareness. Yet here lies the paradox. The same mind that can trace patterns where others see chaos can also invent connections that don't exist. When you think this deeply, your imagination can outpace reality. Silence gains imagined meaning. Small gestures turn into symbols. Simple truths grow into labyrinths of possibility. It's like using a microscope so strong it reveals details that were never meant to be examined that closely. And still, that very intensity, the ability to link seemingly unrelated ideas, is what fuels creativity. History remembers its deep thinkers. Einstein, Da Vinci, Jung, people who saw invisible threads where others saw nothing at all. They asked questions no one else dared to ask, and in doing so, discovered truths no one else had found. Because when your mind never stops asking why, it inevitably finds new paths that others overlook. But in today's world, that kind of mind often feels out of sync. Society celebrates speed over depth, production over reflection, answers over questions. In a culture addicted to instant clarity, stillness looks suspicious. Silence looks weak. Complexity looks like confusion. So deep thinkers learn to hide their depth, to nod through small talk, to move at a pace that isn't their own, to appear certain even when they're still exploring. They adapt, quietly carrying their thoughts like a secret galaxy no one else can see. But what makes deep thinkers truly remarkable isn't just their ability to see the world differently. It's their capacity to keep feeling despite the weight of it all. They may carry the ache of awareness, but they also carry the light of understanding. With time, they begin to realize that not every question needs an answer, and not every thought needs to be solved. Some truths are meant to rest quietly, like stars, beautiful precisely because they're unreachable. When deep thinkers learn to balance reflection with presence, their minds become not prisons, but sanctuaries. They start to see that life isn't meant to be mastered, only experienced. The past stops being a loop, and the future stops being a forecast. There's a stillness that comes when they finally allow themselves to just be, to sit in the middle of uncertainty and call it peace. They learn that meaning isn't only found in grand revelations, but in small, fleeting moments. The warmth of sunlight through a window, the comfort of a single kind word, the laughter that briefly silences the noise inside their head. These moments don't need to be dissected to be real. They just need to be felt. And slowly they begin to understand that their depth was never a curse. It was a compass, one that guided them through chaos toward clarity. Because the truth is, deep thinkers aren't lost souls. They're explorers of the unseen. They're the ones who remind the world that silence can speak, that stillness can move, that thought can be an act of love. So if you're one of them, if your mind never stops, if you feel too deeply, if you see meaning where others see nothing, know this: your depth is not something to fix. It's something to honor. The world needs your way of seeing, even if it doesn't always understand it. Because through your eyes, even the ordinary becomes infinite. They have a way of finding meaning even inside pain, and that's what gives them strength. Because to a deep thinker, even suffering holds data. It's not just agony, it's insight. It teaches them about who they are, how the world works, and what truth costs. But perhaps the hardest lesson for a deep thinker is learning when to stop turning everything over in their mind. To know when to release the need to explain every mystery, to accept that some answers don't exist, at least not yet. Because meaning isn't something waiting to be discovered, it's something we slowly build. And there lies the quiet paradox. The same mind that searches endlessly for clarity eventually learns that peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from presence, from sitting beneath a sky that offers no explanation and realizing that its silence is still enough. Real depth isn't about knowing more, It's about needing less. It's not about drowning in thought, but understanding how to float within it. A deep thinker can often be recognized not by what they say, but by what happens between their words. That thoughtful pause before they speak isn't hesitation, it's precision. It's the space where their mind filters through layers of meaning, searching for the most honest form of expression. They know language can shape entire realities, that a single phrase can mend a wound. So they choose their words with care, sometimes too much care, and people mistake their silence for shyness. In truth, they're listening, to tone, to pauses, to everything unsaid. Because for them, communication isn't just about speech, it's about energy. Psychologically, this sensitivity is rooted in empathy and heightened pattern recognition. Deep thinkers are emotional analysts, quietly gathering data from faces, gestures, and the tremor in someone's voice. They notice the tiny shift in mood that reveals what's being hidden. It isn't magic, it's focus. They read the world like detectives of emotion, scanning for subtleties others miss. But such awareness comes with a strange cost. Once you start seeing through the layers, it's impossible to return to blindness. You begin noticing contradictions everywhere. How people preach joy while bearing their pain. How society glorifies perfection while crumbling under its weight. And once you perceive that clearly, you stop chasing approval and start seeking authenticity instead. That's why deep thinkers often gravitate towards solitude, art, philosophy, and writing, not to escape life, but to translate it. They need wide, open spaces where their minds can stretch without judgment. They find peace in the quiet company of books, in the rhythm of a song, in the sound of their own footsteps echoing down an empty street. They may not speak often, but when they do, their words carry purpose. Their conversations aim to awaken, to linger, to plant something that grows after the moment ends. Yet for all their wisdom, deep thinkers battle something relentless: mental noise. Their thoughts rarely rest. It's like standing before a wall of radio frequencies, each one broadcasting a different memory, idea, or question all at once. Even silence is loud to them. Because where others find quiet, they find amplification, every buried thought rising to the surface. Psychologists call this rumination, the endless looping of questions, regrets, and unfinished thoughts. It isn't negativity, it's a search for closure, for understanding. But not every puzzle resolves, and accepting that truth can feel like surrender. There's a story of a philosopher who said, "I think, therefore I am." Profound, but for a deep thinker, it's both truth and torment. Because thinking affirms their existence, yet it can also consume it. They can reason themselves into paralysis, analyze love until it feels like a theory, study fear until it loses its rawness. They can understand emotion so deeply that they forget to feel it. And that's their greatest challenge, to live, not just to think about living. But once they learn balance, once they let thought serve emotion instead of replacing it, something beautiful happens. They stop being trapped in their minds and start using them as bridges. Bridges between logic and feeling, between self and world, between what is and what could be. And in that balance, they become extraordinary. Not because they think more, but because they finally feel as deeply as they understand. They are bridges between worlds, connecting logic with empathy, intellect with intuition. They can dissect pain and still hold it with compassion. They see the flaws of humanity and choose to love it anyway. That's rare. That's not just intelligence, that's wisdom. A deep thinker doesn't divide people into good or bad. They see them as unfolding stories. They understand that everyone carries invisible wars, shaped by moments that left marks beneath the skin. So they forgive easily, but forget rarely. They release people, but hold on to the lessons, turning each memory over in their mind like smooth stones shaped by time. If deep thinkers sometimes seem melancholic, it isn't sadness, it's awareness. It's knowing that beauty and loss are inseparable, that every joy carries the shadow of impermanence. They understand that love and grief are twin notes in the same melody, and feeling both at once is what it means to be truly alive. Psychologists call this emotional complexity, the capacity to hold mixed emotions at the same time. To a deep thinker, this isn't confusion, it's depth. They see emotions not as good or bad, but as messages. Fear reveals what matters. Sadness exposes what they value. Joy reminds them what's worth protecting. Every feeling, if listened to long enough, tells a truth. But here's what most people don't realize about deep thinkers. They aren't always solemn. Some of the most quick-witted, joyful people you'll ever meet carry this kind of depth. Because when you truly grasp how fragile life is, humor becomes wisdom. They laugh not to dismiss life's absurdity, but to embrace it. They understand that sometimes laughter is the only way to stay sane in a chaotic world. Still, they often feel misunderstood. Their quietness is mistaken for indifference. They're calm for distance. But they're not ignoring you. They're processing you. They're decoding tone, intention, rhythm, emotion. They're not listening to reply. They're listening to understand. And when connection doesn't happen, they withdraw. Not out of pride, but self-preservation. Deep thinkers feel too deeply to fake it. They sense tension in the air, notice when smiles falter, absorb the emotions others leave behind. Beneath their composed surface, their inner world moves like a storm under still water. That sensitivity, though beautiful, can be overwhelming. They absorb moods, pain, even energy that isn't theirs. And that's why solitude isn't isolation for them, it's detox. It's how they return to themselves. In quiet spaces, they breathe again. They journal, reflect, stare out of windows, wander through their thoughts until they find clarity. For a deep thinker, solitude isn't loneliness, it's restoration. It's the sacred place where noise dissolves and truth begins to whisper. But reflection without grounding can spiral. So the healthiest deep thinkers learn to anchor themselves through mindfulness, creativity, or service. They translate inner storms into art, into words, into something that connects their private world to the shared one. Because unexpressed thought becomes weight, through creation, they release it. They come to understand that the point of thinking was never escape. It was transformation. What makes them extraordinary is that they rarely take anything at face value. They question what others accept. They look at traditions, systems, and patterns that people follow without thought, and they ask why. Not to rebel, but to refine, to make the world make sense. And maybe that's what defines a deep thinker most. Their refusal to stop seeking truth, even when the truth hurts. Because to them, awareness, no matter how heavy, is always better than blindness. And while their questions can make them seem defiant, what drives them isn't rebellion, it's compassion. They ask, why do we do this? Does it still hold meaning? Could there be a kinder, wiser way? Their curiosity is an act of love for truth. Yet that same curiosity complicates life. Because when you can see from every angle, it's hard to choose just one. You understand everyone, and so you feel everything. You see how pain echoes, how the wounded wound others, how no one is entirely wrong or entirely right. Suddenly, the world stops fitting into neat categories. That's the burden of empathy. It dissolves judgment. And that's why deep thinkers often feel misplaced in a world that favors quick conclusions over honest contemplation. But that's what makes them rare. In an age built on instant opinions, they hesitate, not from apathy, but from reverence. They know words can heal or harm, that complexity is sacred, and that sometimes silence speaks louder than sound. If you love a deep thinker, you'll notice they don't crave agreement. They crave understanding. They don't need you to echo their thoughts. They want you to wonder with them, to explore, to question, to walk through uncertainty together. Their love language is curiosity. Their tenderness lives in attention, remembering small details, hearing what you didn't say, seeing the person behind the mask. But they also need patience. Deep thinkers don't rush trust. They test the waters of sincerity the same way they test their own reasoning. When they finally let you in, it's not a whim, it's a vow. They don't fall often, but when they do, they fall completely. Their love is deliberate, rooted, awake. There's something profoundly human about the way deep thinkers move through the world. They remind us that life isn't meant to be skimmed, that silence has value, that mystery has its own music. They show us that asking questions isn't a flaw, it's wonder in disguise. And maybe that's the deeper truth the psychology of deep thinkers reveals. that each of us carries the potential to pause, to think, to look inward with honesty. We just forget, in the constant rush, how powerful stillness can be. Maybe deep thinkers exist to remind us, to slow us down, to teach us that reflection is not retreat, but reverence. Because deep thinking isn't just about dissecting life. It's about cherishing it. It's about marveling at how fleeting, complex, and beautifully imperfect everything is. So if you are one of them, if your silence runs deep, if your thoughts feel too vast for small rooms, don't apologize. Don't shrink your inner world to fit shallow spaces. The world needs your kind of mind. The ones who notice the invisible, question the obvious, and transform ordinary moments into meaning. You may not always belong, but you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to see through, to turn chaos into clarity, noise into insight, time into understanding. Because deep thinking isn't just a way of explaining life. It's a way of honoring it. And while the world races by, you hold something it desperately needs, but often forgets: depth. And in a shallow world, depth is its own kind of light.